I want to start with what happened over the weekend, as I was watching very closely as Iran struck at Israel. Now, there are a couple of different directions to go with this. Number one, the utter failure that this attack was should be encouraging to many people around the world. And what I mean by that was the Iranians launched over 200 drones and missiles combined toward key targets in Israel. Many of them failed. 99% were either shot down or failed. I think one landed in a military complex. There was one child that was seriously injured in the attack. But other than that, we did not see with the huge attack that was leveled out. They were able to stop those with the help of Jordan, the U.S., and the Iron Dome in Israel. It's a great place to start. But here's the issue with all of this. And I want you to hear a couple of things from inside our country that is happening. I want to start in Chicago. There was a protest. Now, behind them, and it's important to note that behind them there's a political sign about the DNC. But this was a political gathering, Chicago Palestinian protesters. I want you to hear the crowd's reaction to missiles, 200 drones and missiles being fired at Israel. Listen to this.
I just have to report something to everyone, and so it begins, so to speak. 12 days ago, Israel brazenly hit an Iranian embassy compound in Syria, violating international law again. And Iran has just responded about 30 minutes ago.
Peaceful people. By the way, it was not an embassy. It was a terrorism headquarters. This was part of where one of the people that died in that attack was one of the planners of October 7th, where Hamas, again, they are all of these are emissaries. These are all factions of Iranian control. And what I mean by that, Hamas is armed and paid for and trained, but much by Iran. So are all of these other organizations. The U.S. struck at many of these organizations in the Middle East because they were attacking U.S. assets. The Iranians and what they've done is causing instability in the region. As a matter of fact, the Saudis have even said this. Matter of fact, I want to get to that headline, and there's more. You've got to hear some of these. The Saudis say that Iran instigated Gaza war to sabotage Israel normalization. Iran is a nation that endorses terrorism, and the world should have curtailed it much earlier, a member of the Saudi royal family told the Hebrew media. There have been protests within the nation of Iran, and there is something else here to note, that this is the Ayatollahs. This is the religious leaders. This nation, the nation of Iran is now a theocracy. The supreme leaders and the supreme rulers are the religious leaders that overtook that government in the 1970s. They deposed the rightful government in that nation, and this is not the people's war. The people of Iran, many of them want to protest. They have got people out in the street stopping the majority of the protests. But around the world, in countries around the world, you are seeing former Iranian citizens that are living in other countries where they are allowed to protest, hand in hand with Israelis and Jews across the world, protesting what Iran did. It's important to note that this is happening. I want you to hear something else that happened. There was a group, and I want to make sure I have it in front of me so I can accurately tell you who they are. A group of activists in Chicago are learning to chant in Farsi. 300 activists gathered over the weekend to hear from organizers throughout the country, allegedly to disrupt the Democratic National Convention in August. A clip was posted on X to show these organizers, with an anti-war committee Chicago identified as the outlet. And so these are union members who are learning how to chant. So they are learning to chant in Farsi. I want you to listen to this.
So I'm going to teach you a chant in Persian that you can use if you ever encounter those Zionist freaks, whether they be Iranian or whatever, all right?
Zionist freaks. If you ever encounter those Zionist freaks, is what he said there.
Now, I don't drink margaritas, but we all know what a margarita is. We all know what a bar is. So you're going to say, Marg bar. Marg bar. Marg bar Israel. 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 Thank you.
All right, that's the beginning of it. Now he explains what it means, and then they go on.
What does that mean?
Oh, so it has two meanings depending on who's asking. It can mean death to or down with. So
Can we get a Marbar America?
we can get a Marbar America. Yes, we can. Marbar America.
Marbar America!
Marbar America.
Marbar America!
Thank you.
Death to Israel, death to America. Even if it's down with Israel, down with America. Did you hear them cheer when he said it could either mean one of two things, death to or down with? They all cheered. This is Chicago, Illinois. This is happening. How many? I don't see the other side of this. I don't see the Israelis cheering death. I don't see the Israelis cheering war. I hear the Israelis saying for decades, for generations, the Israelis have been saying, if they would put down their weapons, there would be no war. If we were to put down our weapons, there would be no Israel. And so this continues. And how will the Israelis respond? It's what's frustrating to me about this is that when you have the Israelis protecting their nation. Now, the other side of this, there's more to explain here, because if you look, let me get a list in front of me after this attack. This is from April 8th. 3 Michigan representatives joined 37 other Democratic members of the U.S. House in a letter to President Biden and Secretary Anthony Blinken asking them to withhold the weapons transfer to Israel after 7 humanitarian aid workers were killed. So they wanted to stop this. They wanted to stop the shipment. Nancy Pelosi joins the House Democrats in urging Biden to halt arms to Israel. As more progressive Democrats, U.S. leverage over Israel owes in large part to the $3.3 billion in annual security assistance from Washington. So we had people in the planning stages of this, and I can tell you that the intelligence is out there for a longer period of time than you and I hear about it. This wasn't thought up overnight. When all of a sudden the headlines hit that said, just today's the 15th, this happened, I believe, on the 13th, that just a week before that, or less than a week before that, they were calling to stop a shipment of arms to Israel. Well, here we are with the intelligence gatherers out there saying this is forthcoming. They are planning an attack. You don't think we knew ahead of time? Of course we did. And now what happens? Do we hold people accountable that are not going to stop this? How do people respond? How do the people that are saying we should be withholding help from Israel? The Israelis have an absolute right to protect themselves. I've mentioned before I watched the 47-minute video. Now, there have been edits of this video, and multiple videos have been shown, and they have kept out the most heinous crimes. They've kept out the sexual assaults and the sexual mutilation out of respect for the families, because unlike what we saw with the Holocaust and years and generations later in the Holocaust Museum and others, you see some of the atrocities that happened during the Holocaust. Most of those families are gone now, are dead. But what happened on October 7th, those families are still alive. The hostages, some of them are still in captivity. Many of these people that were murdered and mutilated, their family members are still mourning their loss. And out of respect for them, there's a balance of the world needs to see some of the atrocities that happened. And some of it is out of respect. We're not going to show you the sexual assault and mutilation of women. And so I watched this I sat, no narration, 47 minutes, and a combination of cell phone video, dash cam video, closed circuit television, traffic camera videos of the murders on October 7th. There was no such thing as a civilian on October 7th. I can walk you through much of this as it's burned in my memory of cars driving down a road, just a 2-lane road, could have been anywhere in the world. And there had been Hamas fighters, terrorists, that had broken through a fence, had crashed through a fence, cut through fences, and they had gone on these roads, and they were standing outside of vehicles. And as vehicles were driving past them, they just lit them up with gunfire, just murdered everybody in the car, murdered everybody, walking through neighborhoods and shooting through windows and doors and killing people inside their homes. They went to a music festival and just shot into the porta-johns, murdering everybody on the inside. I saw part of the video had 10 or 12 people behind a concession stand trying to hide that had just been murdered in place. They were just at a music festival. They were running up to unarmed people and just murdering them. They were raping women. I watched 2 videos of decapitation, just of people that were dead. They had killed people and then taking their heads as trophies. I listened to a phone call and watched the translation on the screen that showed a young man that had murdered a bunch of Jews. His words, I killed Jews with my own hands. He took the cell phone from one of the victims and called his parents in Gaza and said, "You should be proud of your son. I just killed more than 10 Jews with my own hands." And father was so proud, mother was so proud, and of their son for killing unarmed people. That was on October 7th. There was no such thing as a civilian. There were members of the military that were gunned down as well in their barracks, unarmed as they were at the time, in a military installation. But they murdered every Israeli they could find. And now as Israel responds and defends itself, the world is telling them that they shouldn't. They just had 200 missiles and drones fired at their country, and they're supposed to stand down and do nothing about it. I think it's foolish.
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Tap to watch the first season of Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast. You can also click the button in the middle to subscribe.